You won't see this twist coming. Watch until the end to find out how the fate of the characters unfolds. I used to laugh at women like me, women who said age is just a number, who got tangled in stories they had no business writing. But now, standing in the quiet of my apartment, holding a test that bore two unshakable lines, I wasn't laughing. I was shaking. Pregnant. The word echoed inside me like a confession. It wasn't just the result that made my heart race. It was the truth behind it, the truth that I had crossed a line I swore I never would. Not with him. Not with someone who still had the softness of youth in his voice, who didn't even know what it meant to lose everything and start again. He was 20 years younger than me. 20. I met him by accident, or maybe fate, if you believe in those things. He was my friend's son's best friend, in town for the summer. Bright, curious, a little reckless. We were never meant to speak beyond pleasantries. But then there was that night, the one I try to rewrite in my head every time I close my eyes. It started with a conversation, a glass of wine too many, a shared silence that felt too heavy to be ignored. And now, this. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing and everything. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me harder than I expected. I wasn't just pregnant. I was pregnant by someone who should have never even looked at me that way. Someone who trusted me, maybe even admired me. And I let it happen. No, I chose it. And now I had to choose again. Not just what to do with this life growing inside of me, but how to live with the choices that had brought me here. The guilt, the shame, the terrifying whisper that maybe this wasn't entirely a mistake, just a secret that would cost me more than I could imagine. Before you continue, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. I've got another compelling story coming tomorrow that you definitely don't want to miss. This one's just the beginning. Stay tuned for more twists and turns, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when the next chapter is up. Thanks for being part of this journey. It wasn't supposed to go past that night. That was the agreement I made with myself. A one-time mistake, a lapse in judgment I could pretend never happened. But things never stay neat and simple when feelings start to grow in places they shouldn't. The morning after, I told myself it had all been a blur, a fleeting moment between two lonely people trying to forget who they were. But he didn't vanish. He stayed, not just physically, but in every room I entered, in every pause between thoughts. He messaged me, he came by. He smiled like nothing had shattered, but I had shattered. He brought flowers once. No occasion, just said he thought of me when he passed by the shop. That should have been my wake-up call. Not the gift, but the way my heart fluttered when he handed it to me. I was old enough to know what that meant and wise enough to fear it. I avoided him after that, didn't answer his texts, canceled plans with mutual friends. But he noticed. He always noticed. One day he showed up at my door, uninvited but not unwelcome. He looked nervous, like someone about to confess a crime. I opened the door only halfway, just enough to tell him without words that he shouldn't be there. "I'm not here to make things harder," he said, voice quiet. "I just want to know if it meant anything to you, because it did to me." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words stuck somewhere between guilt and longing. When he left, I sat on the floor, back pressed against the door, tears running down without a sound. What had I done? To him? To myself? To the idea of who I thought I was? And now, with every passing day, I felt the shift inside me, not just in my body, but in everything I believed about control, responsibility, and love. I had crossed a line, but I was no longer sure if I wanted to go back. The weeks passed like slow-moving clouds, heavy, gray, and impossible to ignore. I hadn't told anyone, not my sister, not my closest friend, and certainly not him. How could I? How do you tell a young man still figuring out who he is that he's about to become a father? That he's tangled in something so adult, so irreversible? I had always been careful with my life. I made decisions with my head, not my heart. I built walls high enough to keep chaos out. Or so I thought. But now, sitting in the waiting room of a small clinic, clutching a piece of paper with an appointment time printed on it, I felt like I had betrayed every version of myself. There was a woman beside me, much younger. She looked calm. Maybe she was just better at pretending. I envied her, not her age, not her situation, but the way she seemed to breathe without guilt. My name was called. I walked into the room, my legs barely holding me up. The doctor was kind, professional, her tone measured. She asked questions I answered on autopilot. Last cycle, symptoms, family history. And then, as she moved the ultrasound wand across my skin, the screen flickered, and there it was, a heartbeat, tiny, rhythmic, alive. I didn't expect to cry, but I did. Not out of joy, not entirely from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that something real was growing inside of me, and that no matter how I got here, this life was no longer about mistakes or shame. It was about choices. On my way home, I walked slowly. Everything felt louder, the hum of traffic, children laughing across the street, a dog barking in the distance. The world hadn't changed, but I had. And when I opened my front door, there he was, sitting on the steps, eyes red, hands clenched. "You disappeared," he said. "I thought I did something wrong." I stood there, frozen. "You didn't," I whispered. "But I did. And now I have to make it right. Somehow." I'll take a short pause. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and if you've ever gone through something similar. I'd love to read your stories. And if you'd like to hear more, don't forget to subscribe. I'm continuing now. I didn't plan to tell him that day. I thought I'd keep holding the secret, cradling it like something fragile and forbidden. But when I saw his face, so open, so painfully young, I knew I couldn't carry it alone anymore. We sat in the kitchen, the same place where he had once made me laugh over badly burnt toast and a story about his clumsy dog. Now everything felt heavier, like the walls had heard too much. "I'm pregnant," I said, just like that. No warning, no soft let-in. The words fell from my mouth like stones, and when they landed, they shattered both the silence and whatever innocence had remained between us. He blinked, once, twice. His lips parted, but no sound came. "Are you sure it's—" he started, then stopped himself. He didn't need to finish. "Yes," I said, meeting his eyes. For a long time, neither of us moved. I thought he'd leave, run, say something stupid or cruel. But instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. His fingers trembled. "I don't know what to say," he finally whispered. "I don't expect you to," I replied, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "I just needed you to know, because whatever happens next, it has to begin with honesty." He nodded slowly, his gaze locked on mine. But behind his eyes, I could see it. The fear, the confusion, the overwhelming pressure of a future he never asked for. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I replayed every moment, every breath. The truth was out now, and it tasted like metal, bitter, cold, irreversible. I didn't feel relief. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't felt in years. And yet, beneath it all, there was a flicker of something else, courage, the kind that comes not from being fearless, but from moving forward despite the fear. I had made mistakes, yes, but I was no longer hiding from them. Tomorrow, everything would change. The days that followed were quiet, but not calm. Every conversation felt like a negotiation with reality. He came by often, sometimes to talk, sometimes just to sit in silence. I could see the questions brewing behind his careful words. Will we raise this child together? Will people find out? Will you regret me? But he didn't ask them, not yet, and I didn't offer answers. We were still figuring out what kind of story we were writing, if it was a tragedy, a lesson, or something neither of us had words for yet. I told my sister next. She stared at me for a full minute before speaking. He's how much younger? 20 years. She exhaled slowly. You never do anything halfway, do you? No, I said, half smiling. Apparently not. There were tears, hers and mine, but beneath them was something unexpected, understanding. She didn't judge me the way I feared. Maybe because she'd made her own mistakes too. Or maybe because she saw for the first time how truly alone I had been. The hardest part, though, was telling my mother. She didn't speak when I told her. Her silence cut sharper than any insult ever could. She didn't raise her voice or cry. She just left the room. And for days I didn't hear from her. But I kept going. I went to my appointments. I read every book I could find on raising a child alone. I prepared for a future that was uncertain, but mine. One evening, he came over with a small box. Inside was a silver chain with a single simple charm, a tiny heartbeat engraved on a flat circle. I know I can't promise you anything perfect, he said, but I want to try. I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't believe him, but because I was still learning to believe in myself. This wasn't the life I planned. It was messier, lonelier, and full of questions, but it was also real. And in the ruins of what had been, something new was quietly blooming. Hope.